know my name, well, you know my story. And no mountain could ever stop the plans you've made. Your heart is for me, and I believe in your name. Well, miracles can happen. I believe in your name. Well, miracles can happen. The blind will see, the sick will say, sing hallelujah with confidence. When we can love your mercy with, sing hallelujah and live again. When the lies come from every side, say you're done, say it's over. I remember the 1,000 times your love has won, but this is far from over. I believe in your name, well, miracles can happen. I believe in your name, well, miracles can happen. The blind will see, the sick will say, sing hallelujah with confidence. When we can love your mercy with, sing hallelujah, live Jesus, Jesus, there's hope found in your name right now, right now. And Jesus, Jesus, there's hope found in your name right now, right now. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, your love is wrecking change right now, right now. Nothing can stop you. Jesus, Jesus, there's hope found in your name right now, right now. I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you'll never fail me yet. I know the night won't last, your word will come to pass, and my heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough, keep me within your love. Oh, my heart will sing your praise again. Oh yes, it will. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you'll never fail. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you'll never fail me yet. Never fail me yet.
Thanks for watching. Today we start a new series called Remind. That's R-E-Mind. And in this series, over the next few weeks, actually 8 to 10 weeks, we're going to talk about 10 truths that can help us discover or recover life. Each of these truths attempts to correct a misaligned thought and behavior. And today I want to talk to you about emotions. Emotions are not mysterious visitors. They can be identified and understood. If you look at the Bible and the stories of people who are emotional in the Bible, the stories are just endless. You can start in Genesis. In the first few chapters, you find Cain and Abel. And Cain becomes very angry with his brother Abel. And in Exodus, you see the golden calf incident where Moses comes down with the 10 Commandments, and as he comes down, there's this golden calf. And it says in Exodus that Moses gets angry. He takes the calves and he burns them or melts them down. He grinds them into powder. He pours it in the water, and he makes the Israelites drink it. That's pretty upset, I would think. He was angry. King David, who's attributed to a lot of the Psalms, he writes in this brokenness, this despondency, this joy also, and he's very sensitive. Jeremiah is known as the weeping prophet. But what about Jesus? Was he emotional? If you read through, Jesus wept when Lazarus had been in the grave. With Mary and Martha, he was just upset about his friends and their loss. He wept. On the triumphal entry, as he entered the city, he paused and he wept over the city. But there's another story I want to point out today where Jesus was angry. He'd gone to the temple and he saw this exploitation happening of people, not just vendors, not just people buying and selling, but people taking advantage of others. And we can look at that passage. I'm reading from the Message versions, Matthew 21, 12 through 17. Let me read it for you. Jesus went straight to the temple and threw out everyone who had set up shop buying and selling. He kicked over the tables of loan sharks and the stalls of dove merchants. He quoted this text, "My house was designated a house of prayer. You've made it a hangout for thieves." Now there was room for the blind and the crippled to get in. Now there was. They came to Jesus and he healed them. And when the religious leaders saw the outrageous things he was doing and heard all the children running and shouting through the temple, "Hosanna to David's son," they were up in arms. They took him to task. "Do you hear what these children are saying?" Jesus said, "Yes, I hear them. And haven't you heard in God's word? From the mouths of children and babies, I furnish a place of praise." Fed up, Jesus turned on his heel and left the city for Bethany, where he spent the night. Emotions are what make us human. J. Wallace Hamilton writes a book many years ago called Ride the Wild Horses. And in that book, he writes that some cultures suppress their emotions. Other cultures, they suggest that we just let all the emotions run wild. And in his book, it's a simple summary, he recommends we ride the wild horses. Understand that emotions are part of being human, and we should not kill them or let them run wild. We need to understand and realize how important our emotions are. Dr. Chris Cortman, a doctor of psychology in Venice, writes a book called Your Mind, An Owner's Manual for a Better Life. In this book, he describes 10 truths that will set you free. And it's from this book that I'm creating this teaching series. And over the next 8 to 10 weeks, we're going to examine how we can become aware of these things that will help us with our mental health in the midst of a world that's ever changing. Now, Dr. Cortman and I are friends. We've known each other for a long time. My daughter, Laura, who's a licensed clinical social worker, she works a couple of days a week in his Venice office. I've had dinner with him several times, and we've had him to our campus as recent as this last fall to talk about this series. And we've done some recordings on that. There's some video that's going to be available for you. Little did we know in the fall that at that time how important this series would be in the face of this COVID-19 coronavirus crisis. This week, if you want more of that interview, we're sharing a little bit of the expanded stuff more each week of the interview that he and I have together. So if you want to see that, go to YouTube. You can click on that and see a broader interview. Today, I want us to begin to look at our emotions. And there are several truths, and as we go through these 10, there are several points today that I want to talk to you about, even these 10 truths. But the first thing I want to talk about is emotions are not mysterious visitors. They can be identified and understood. And I want to give you 5 insights about emotions. And here's the first one. All of our emotions are statements about us. And you can see this in this video that he and I are doing together.
One of the myths I learned along the way was these are your feelings, and feelings are facts, and you can't change them. Well, that's a complete myth. And the first truth we try to explain that feelings are something that we create by our perceptions of the world. And so there's some little minor truths in the first chapter, like all of my emotions come from my perceptions, never from facts. And I guess my favorite story involves a gentleman who's in my office on a Tuesday morning around 9 o'clock, and I say, "How's it going today?" And he goes, "Oh, Doc, not good, not good." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "My daughter, she didn't call me, no card, nothing for Father's Day." And he was feeling hurt and rejected and unappreciated and angry and so forth. And I looked into his eyes and I said, "Brian, Father's Day's next weekend." And in a split second, all of his emotions changed. He was embarrassed, he was amused, he was hopeful, he was lighter. And the amazing thing was, the facts never changed. Father's Day was always on the calendar for the following weekend. The only thing that changed was his perception. And by changing our perception, you instantaneously change how you feel. So in the first chapter, we talk about all your feelings or statements about you. You know, two of us can go in the same movie and walk out feeling dramatically differently because my feelings are about me, and your feelings are about you.
All of our emotions are statements about us. By changing our perception, we change how we feel. Perceptions vary. Two people can watch the coronavirus task force on TV and get two entirely different emotional responses. Some are more frightened, some are more comforted. Our response often is based on our perception, and our response tells us more about us than them. For example, you get an angry, aggressive driver who's frustrated with other drivers. It says more about us than it does about all the crazy people that are driving on the road. Think about it. One day, everything is fine, you're in traffic, it's not a big deal. The next day, it seems like people are out to get you. And it's really the same people on the same day, driving the same way, but it's about our perception of what's going on. So let's look at some emotions today, some emotions that we share. The first one I want to bring up is anger. Anger is an emotion. It usually happens when we experience some type of injustice. And this experience makes us feel threatened, trapped, unable to defend ourselves. And some people think that anger is only a negative emotion, and it does have its negative side. I mean, uncontrolled anger can cause problems for those all around us. You want to see uncontrolled anger, look at Cain and Abel. He killed his brother intentionally. He was angry with him. Because in Cain's perception, Abel was a threat. Abel was the problem. You get rid of the problem. But anger, as an emotion, it also has a positive side. It has something that sometimes it's just okay to be angry. You should be. In this story of Jesus at the temple, his anger was not so much at people, but at the buying and selling at the temple and this system of injustice. The oppression that was going on there, the exploitation of the poor. Bible scholars tell us in that day, when someone approached the temple to offer a sacrifice, they were to get a lamb without blemish. And if you were a shepherd and you brought a lamb that you thought was pretty good, they'd come in and these market people would say, "Look, we have to certify it, and I'm sorry, but this lamb has a blemish. But we'll take your lamb in on trade and you pay a little extra fee and we'll give you a certified blemish-free lamb and you can take it to the priest and they'll sacrifice it." So a lot of things are going on there. The next person that came up with his lamb, "Oh, your lamb has a blemish," put it in the pen and you take the one that was just out before, that just delivered before, and for a small fee you get the one that the last guy just traded in. And it was a system of oppression and a system of exploitation. Jesus was emotional. In this story, he got angry. Why? Because he gets angry when people are oppressed, when they're marginalized. See, it's okay to get angry when you hear people, especially children, who are being victimized. And you say, "Well, I don't normally get angry. Sometimes you should." I know people say, "I don't get angry." And I go, "Really?" "Nope." And I begin to ask, because these are some of the identifiers of anger. So I don't get angry, but let me ask this. Do you ever feel frustrated? Oh, yeah. Peeved? Yeah. Contrary? Yeah. Bitter? Yeah. Infuriated? Sometimes. Irritated, mad, cheated, vengeful, insulted. All these are synonyms for anger. These are all characteristics of someone who has anger issues. And sometimes they're mild, sometimes they're more significant. The next time, though, you get in a huff, maybe you're not angry, you get in a huff, I want to give you some tips for anger management. First, take a break. If you're just really irritated or frustrated or peeved or just mad, maybe you need to take a break. How do I do that? Well, just try walking or listening to a calming song. Begin to ask yourself the question, why am I so annoyed? What is it that's bothering me about this? And what can I do? Second thing, express your anger constructively. This is how I'm feeling. Take a deep breath. Why? Why am I having this response? Should I be nicer to those around me when I have this response? You know the answer to that. See, anger is an emotion. Emotions are not mysterious visitors. They can be identified and understood. We need to focus on finding a solution. Why am I angry? Why do I feel devalued or helpless? So let's look at another emotion, fear. It's a normal emotion. I mean, one that kept our ancestors from being eaten alive. We've heard from about the flight and fight response. But today when fear arrives, let's evaluate for a second. Let me make a suggestion. Maybe instead of running from fear, we should confront fear. Confront it instead of avoiding it. If you're afraid of something, whether it's a serious discussion with someone or meeting new people, maybe you have a fear of heights or something like that, it's natural to stay away from your source of fear. But sometimes it makes our fear worse. Instead, good counseling is we need to face our fear safely. For example, if you suddenly develop a fear of driving, it's suggested that you get back in the car and drive again right away. Stick close to home. Don't go for a long trip, but just small increments, but don't avoid driving. Another thing it suggests is instead of confront your fear, distract yourself from your fear. Sometimes our fears can become so overwhelming that it's hard for us to think about anything else. But letting the same thoughts play in our mind repeatedly does not help us. It becomes a negative impact on our emotional state. It also can make fear even worse. So, that's what I ask you today. If you feel yourself fixating on worry or a source of stress, I don't know what caused that today in your life. Maybe it's the latest coronavirus report. If that happens, try something distracting. Listen to an audiobook or a podcast. Maybe you cook with a new recipe, something that you can concentrate on. Go for a walk or jog or a bike ride. So confront it, distract it. A third thing I suggest, consider the fear logically. Take a moment to think about your fear. Is there something we can do about it? Can it actually harm me? What's the worst thing that can happen to me if the fear came true? What would I do in that scenario? And you could say, well, I've got answers for all that and it's not good. But knowing how you would deal with it, how you would deal with your fear can help you feel less afraid. So let's look at some other emotions. I'm not going to go into much detail, but sadness, loneliness, heartbroken, all these go in the sadness category. Gloomy, disappointed, grieved. Let's go to a more positive category. Enjoyment, happiness, love, relief, contentment, amusement, joy, pride, excitement, peace, satisfaction. Sadness or enjoyment. Here's a side note. Worry, stress, and anxiety always work against the enjoyment category. See, our emotions are statements about us. So whatever you're feeling is a statement about us. Number two, our emotions are often the results of our thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs. Perception, much more than the reality of the events, governs our emotions. Perceptions, not facts, often fuel our emotional response. Like the man on the video with Dr. Cortman, who, he talks about how this guy was just so upset because his daughter forgot Father's Day, and he was really upset about it. He was hurt about it. He didn't know what to do about it. And then Dr. Cortman said, but you realize that Father's Day was not last week, it's next week. And all of a sudden he goes, oh, everything changes. The facts were the same. Father's Day was always the second week, but his perception that it was a week earlier and that she had forgotten him changed his whole mood, and he was very emotional about that. How we perceive things drives our emotions. My life scars affect my perception. My life experience affects my perception. It also affects all the ways that I look at and view the world. Which leads me to the third truth today, and it's this. We are most emotional about the things in which we have the greatest investment. See, all of our emotions are statements about our investments, the things that we think are important. Sports teams, we haven't seen a lot of that lately, but they create emotional responses. I mean, we are invested in a team after all these years, and our team wins, we're ecstatic. When they don't win, we get pretty sad about that. Parents at T-ball games and soccer games, you've been to those? Man, they're so invested in their kids, and they're excited, and they're yelling at the refs, and there's a lot of enthusiasm at these kind of games. I mean, because they're invested. But think about this. How many of us would watch a six-year-old soccer game on TV? I'm not interested. Why? Because I don't have an investment there. But if my grandchild were on there, that's a different story. See, if we feel something strongly, we're invested. If we feel it very strongly, we are very invested. Our emotions are statements about that which we care, that which our lives are poured into. Which leads to the fourth principle today. It's this. Our emotions communicate how we perceive reality. So let me look at a few more emotions for you today. Anxiety. I could talk for a long time about anxiety. But simply, it is the mind and body's reaction to stressful, dangerous, or unfamiliar situations. I mean, let me say that again. It's the mind and the body's reaction to stress, dangerous, or unfamiliar situations. Anyone feel that these days? I mean, there's a formula for anxiety. Investment, that which I care about, plus threat equals anxiety. Investment, that which I care about, which is life, family, and health, plus threat, coronavirus, equals anxiety. If you feel any anxiety today, there's probably a good reason why you do, because this formula is at work in your life. So anxiety is one of the things, it's one of our emotions. Another emotion is guilt. I love to talk about guilt because I'm such a professional when it comes to guilt. I mean, guilt is the gift that keeps on giving. You know, parents, we guilt our children. As a young man, I grew up in a guilt environment in church, and I understand it. I see the components of it, and I really like to get rid of the guilt in people's lives. Another emotion is panic. People feel trapped or out of control. So, you can feel this anxiety and even panic disorder that comes out of the whole thing. It's just feeling of being trapped. These are emotions. So these emotions, they're not mysterious visitors. They really are based on who we are. I mean, they can be identified and understood, which leads to the last principle today in this. Emotions manifest themselves in three distinct forms. The first way that you'll see emotions is in the way that I feel. This subjective thing. My emotions are real to me. They may be irrational to you, but that's the way it makes me feel, and it's real. They're my feelings. Something in me triggers, for whatever reason, something happens and I feel that way. So emotions can come up, number one, through our feelings. The second way emotions can be manifest are through our state of mind. There are physiological changes. Something it's not just the way I feel, but something's going on in my body. There's a churning that's happening there, a complex, a physical reaction. All these things are firing. It's not just the way I feel, but something else is happening. The third way that emotions are manifest in my life are in certain behaviors. That we really expect our emotions to drive certain behaviors. Behavior is a tremendous tool for expressing how we feel, right? When we're bursting with happiness, we feel great, it's okay to laugh. And when you're overwhelmed with sadness, it's okay to cry. Emotions are not some mysterious visitors. They can be identified and they can be understood. And in this time of our lives, at this stage of our community, some of us are having so many different emotional feelings and responses. Where is it coming from? Well, they're not mysterious. They can be identified, they can be understood, and God can help us with them. Can I pray for you today? Father, thanks for your love and grace. Thanks for the opportunity we have to go through some of our emotions. Forgive us for the times that we just say, I'm just an angry person, that's just who I am, but it's not. Forgive us, Father, for the times that we get emotional about things that we should not. We ask for grace to help us when we get emotional about things that we cannot control. We ask that the Spirit of Christ would be ours today. We get angry at the right time, not at the wrong time. We feel the right emotion in the right measure. Give us your strength through the Spirit of Christ, we pray. In his name, amen. Thanks for watching today. I want to tell you a story in closing. Grandkids, during this time of social distancing, my grandchildren come into our house and they love to swim in the pool. It's a great thing for kids to burn energy, and they've got lots of energy. And there's 5 of them, but just a couple days ago, 3 of them were there. Colin, who's 13, Peyton, 11, and Brady is 8. Now, they're playing tag in the pool. They're all excellent swimmers. And Brady, at 8 years old, he has a disadvantage. He's the youngest. But, all of a sudden, I see Brady dive in the pool, halfway across the pool, and Colin is there, and he's going after his big brother. And just about that time, I hear a scream. He comes up out of the water, and he's crying. And he's really upset. And his brother's got there. He's trying to help him. I come over to try to talk to him, try to find out what's wrong. But emotions are in the air. What happened? Well, it depends on who you ask. I said, Brady, what happened? Colin kicked me in the face, right in the nose. And my nose hurts. He kicked me right in the nose on purpose. He meant it. Perception. And he's not only hurt, emotional, he's angry. Colin said, it was an accident. He swam into me. It's not my fault. He swam into my feet. I was just trying to get out of the way. I didn't mean anything. And here I am as the mediator. What do? I simply realize in this circumstance, there's no one to blame. Brady's going to be okay. So I got him out of the water and dried him off, and I calmed him down. Colin, it's okay. I know it was an accident. Emotions everywhere. This coronavirus that we're going through, I want you to hear me very clearly. We're going to get through this together. And sometimes it'll help us if we spend less time blaming. There's lots to blame. Other countries, politicians. If we could get through this together if we spend less time blaming and more time caring for one another. I'm here to remind you, there's one who cares for you. He loves you today, and so do I. Thanks for watching.